Hello, friend. Welcome to the Happy Family Club. We're delighted to have you join us. Our mission is to help you have a happier, stronger family. We do that by bringing you the world's greatest experts in family, marriage, parenting, and relationships. We interview them to discover their secrets, their strategies, their techniques, and bring them to you so that you can cherry pick exactly what you need right now to have more success and more joy in your family.
And if you enjoyed this interview, we encourage you to share it with your friends and your family, and come on to the happyfamilyclub.com and see if you can find more information that's going to help you and your family be happier.
Again, thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the interview. Hello, friends. Welcome to the Happy Family Club podcast. We are so excited to have you here today, and we are ecstatic to have with us Sheryl Gould. She is just an amazing individual who 7 years ago decided that she was going to take a lot of her parenting expertise and working with teens and tweens and help families around the world through an online presence. So we're just excited to have you here. And actually, I'm going to have Margie tell a little bit more about you, but thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Sheryl. We love having you here. And I think for over 15 years, you've been coaching moms, right?
Yes, right. Well, thank you for that introduction. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah, delighted.
Well, also, Cheryl's written a book, the SOS, the Technology Guidebook for Parents of Teens and Tweens. I love that title.
Yeah.
Wow. And she's getting ready to come out with another book. We're excited about that. And she's got all these different organizations that she supports and has helped thousands and thousands of moms and children relationships. So you're making a difference in the world, Sheryl, and we're so happy that you're here to make a difference for us. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
So, as you know, one of the things that we love to ask is kind of the secret sauce of happy families from our experts. And we're going to get to that in just a minute. But before we do, I would love to hear a little bit about your backstory. Because it's not every day that a mom decides like, oh, I'm going to start coaching moms and creating support groups and then take it online and help people all around the world. So what got you to where you're at? What's sort of the backstory to, creating Moms of Tweens and Teens?
Wow. Well, it's been a journey and a personal one. Like so many of our stories are connected with our own struggles and challenges. And my oldest now, she's 33.
Yeah.
And when she hit the tween years, I really started to struggle with her. And she was pulling away. She was angry. She was expressing all of these emotions and pushing back and being disrespectful. And I took her to therapy. I thought, I'm going to fix her.
Yeah.
and therapy can be so helpful. And then I would get brought into the session, like the last 10 minutes of the session. And I realized, I think that it's me. Like, I think that, that I'm trying to fix her. And I think that I really need help. And a lot of my own pain growing up, my own wounds were impacting the way I was parenting her.
Yeah.
And I loved, there was a therapist there that always would come out. She would smile at me and say hi. And I thought, maybe I should go start seeing her and talking to her about some of these things. And then she led a mom's group.
Oh, wow.
She invited me into that mom's group after probably a year and thought I was finally maybe ready to join it. And I got in there and all these moms were sharing their challenges and their struggles and supporting each other and challenging each other in really positive ways. And it changed my life. I mean, it changed my relationship with my husband, with my kids, with myself, with my mom. I mean, so much healing happened from this. And then the therapy practice said, would you like to start a group here and we'll train you?
Oh my goodness. That's amazing.
Yeah. And so I started leading a group with another mom. And so they trained us and it was amazing. And I'm like, I want to do this. Like, to see people's lives be changed was out of my own experience in my own life and having that transformation happen. that then I went on to start another group outside of the therapy practice. And then that snowballed. And before you knew it, somebody said, you have got to start a website. And it's been a total God thing. Just all along the way, the little pieces and parts that fit in that I'm like, okay, you know, this is what I meant to do. And yeah, so it's been an amazing journey and growth process. And I continue to do my own work around it because we're never done, right?
No,
always working on these things, and we're always parents. So,
always parents,
Yeah,
and
we
always
are.
and always human beings needing to grow ourselves,
That's
right?
right.
yeah.
So people, you're doing that. So
Yeah.
I have a kind of a side personal question because I think it's so fascinating. I wonder if you can kind of think through, you know, what was going on inside of you in your mind where you came to the point where you're humble enough to say, you know, maybe it's me that needs to be worked on. Because Sheryl, you've worked with a lot of parents. I've worked with a lot of parents. You know, we've talked to a lot of people. I've worked with a lot of business owners, and getting to that point doesn't often happen, you know. And so you recognize that, oh, maybe I can work on myself. And can you kind of remember back to what brought you to that point?
That is such a good question. I don't think anybody has ever asked me that. I think that it was that I could feel emotional around it. I saw that my daughter was in pain and she was hurting, but I was angry. Like I didn't want, it was inconvenient. It was like, you know, you're making it difficult. And, you know, and I knew, gosh, you know, here I was a very compliant kid and agreeable. And then I had this kid that was just a spitfire, strong-willed, breaking all the rules. I'm like, you're not supposed to be this way. Like, go to your room and, you know, and just wanted to, like, you know, what do they call it? Like, get a knot in her tail. What is that? What is that? Anyway, just like, come on, get with the program.
Exactly.
And so I was missing her heart. And I knew that I was getting in the way of really giving her what she needed. And I think that that was a catalyst to, there was a disconnect there. And I was thinking, why am I having such a hard time supporting my daughter? And instead I'm just feeling, and I did not consider myself an angry person. I was very kind and very nice and very compliant and agreeable. So I have it, but
this anger was like, what's this?
yeah. But it was like this anger of it, you know, this is not the way that it's supposed to be.
Yeah. I love that answer. And I love that awareness. And you know, and you said, well, it's, you know, the how it rolled out and whatnot, and it's a God thing. And I think that it's amazing to me to see how, you know, there was enough humility there and enough awareness and discomfort that you decided to do something. And the beautiful thing is then you took it to other people, right? Which is also really cool. And you kind of answered it, but I'd love to, again, I want to get to the secret sauce question in a minute, but I mean, another follow-up question is you also said that you looked around and you're like, you know what, maybe I could help other people with this. And I think that's a rare thing as well. A lot of times people find their solution and they're just content with that. But you
keep it and hold on to it.
Yeah, exactly. But you didn't. You said, oh, let's start another group. Let's do something. And I wonder if what's the driver behind that?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I was always my mom always used to say, I was the one at the party in high school talking to the person that was like having the problems. So I think, you know, it naturally came, like, I was just kind of wired that way, I think, too. And at one point, I was a radio, TV, film major, but at one point I thought, you know, I just want to, like, go back to school and become a therapist. Like, I just was always drawn to personal growth, you know, and to read in the books and to, you know, and I think that was one of the ways that I was wired. But I do think that there's something that's very meaningful when we can use our pain for good and know that our stories, if we can make meaning, and I think it was Henry Nouwen that said that we can use our stories and make meaning from them. That's a really powerful healing thing. And so it was part of that too.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I found that in my own life and other people I've dealt with. I mean, what you're saying is so true. And we take that pain and we tell it from a different story. We create healing and growth, and we create solace for other people, which is so powerful.
And hope.
And hope. Yeah. So powerful in our own journey and our own challenges. So kudos for you for doing that. And I think that there's a broader message. I mean, a lot of people listening to this and a lot of the moms you deal with probably aren't going to go start, a global movement like you've done, right? And that's okay. Not everybody's destined to walk large on the history of life, right? But I do think that your story, number one, your awareness, like, there's pain here, something can change, and I can have hope that there's something to change, and I'm willing to work on myself. And the second piece of that taking your pain and turning that into a blessing for other people, I think is a really powerful message that a lot of people can and should hear, because even if it's only in our own family circumstance, right? I know it's like, you don't have to be, if you grew up in a terrible home situation, you don't have to be a victim to that. You can use that. You can tell your story, you can heal, and you can heal your children and your family and your relationships and whatnot. And I think that you're an example of that. And I think that's a key principle to family success that a lot of people overstep and don't see, right? So very cool. Yeah, very cool. I'm so glad of your answer on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So let's chat for just a minute about your secret sauce. Like we love the question, like, what do you see as a key principle to family happiness? And I just am excited to hear your answer, because when you talk about challenging parental moments, tweens and teens like are forefront, it's like, my kid, like in your experience, like they went bonkers on me and I have no idea what to do. And the world's crazy now and I don't know. And we don't seem to be quite equipped as parents for that, testosterone moment that happens in our boys' lives, or this, this puberty section that has like, wait, what just happened? So your thoughts on what really creates a happy family, and what's your secret sauce on that?
Well, that's interesting, because I was thinking of answering it in two different ways.
Oh, good.
I think as far as like the secret sauce, and this isn't so much what we can do, but kind of a belief system, is that it is never too late. And I think that's something that we need, like you were using the word hope. You're both using that word, and Margie. Moms come and they're like, it's just too late. Like things are too far gone. And my relationship is so strained with my kid, and they're a junior in high school, or they're a senior in high school, and they won't speak to me. They hate me. Our relationship is just so inflamed. And I will say it's never too late. And that when we can start learning and growing and learning some of those things that we didn't grow up. I mean, they always say we didn't get a manual.
Right.
We didn't. And learns how to heal, and some of those things that we didn't learn that we can do, that's going to build connection and build a stronger relationship. Things do start turning around. Yeah. So that, I think, is the secret sauce, is knowing that, and we can also change generations to come.
Yes.
So that is very powerful to think of. So what, we always, I think a lot of us think, well, I'm never going to do it like maybe my parent did. Not that they, not saying anything, it's very humbling being a parent. I'm going, oh, that's how my mom.
I know, right? Yeah.
Now I get it, right? But it's also, I'm never going to do that.
Yeah.
And so I didn't maybe do that, but I was doing it in some way, and I was totally perplexed. Like, okay, I didn't think I was going to do that, but I think I know that. So, we can learn different ways of relating and healing, and it affects. I always say it's like a wind chime. One person changes, you start changing, and it affects everybody around you.
I love that analogy, the wind chime. What a cool visual that is. Yeah. I had two other pictures coming to my mind, or actually one picture and one comment, and that's, I love the fact that it's never too late and we can start. You know, if you think about a chain, oftentimes we look back and we see this, you know, maybe a chain of broken families and abuse or whatever behind us. And we think, oh, we're just part of that and that's our destiny. But we can always remember that a chain link, the first link begins a new section.
Mm-hmm.
And that one link can be strong and create other strong links. And so it's never too late. You can be that, or in your example, the wind chime, you can be that one that starts to move. Right? And it's so beautiful. The other thing is on occasion, I'll sit down with our children and I'll say, I need to have a serious talk with you. And they'll be like, okay, Dad, what is it? And I'm like, I need to tell you that Dad is human.
Yeah.
And I'm still learning and growing. And there's going to be some areas of your life where I've really messed up. You're going to have baggage and probably need therapy.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I didn't try to, but you know, I just am human. So there you go. You know, I love you and it was well intended, but you're going to have baggage. So I'm sorry.
There's something really comforting about that, though, in a really weird sort of way.
I
I
know.
remember being told in a growth group I was in, the leader of the group, the facilitator, he looked at me and he said, you know, we're going to screw our kids up. You're going to screw your kid up. And I was like both horrified and comforted at the same time. That's just true. We've all, and I think that helps our kids too. Like what you said, your kids is I'm human. I'm going to mess up. You know, I just want to apologize for my shortcomings. I'm working on them.
Yep, exactly.
We're never going to, do things perfectly. And it is very comforting.
And so a number of years ago, I read a book called The Talent Code. I don't know if you're familiar with it at all, but it does some in-depth neurological study on the human brain and then connects it with real life examples. And it debunks this idea that, people are just born with certain talents. It doesn't debunk it. We know, from our 11 children, they all come to us different. And there's no doubt, like some of them, we have a 9-year-old son. He's 11. When he was 9, he picked up a pencil. Thank you, babe. He picked up a pencil and started drawing. And we were like, oh, what is this? Like,
where'd that come from?
Like, no, we have our 17, almost 18-year-old daughter sat down and taught herself how to play piano. Now she's practically a concert pianist. It's like, I can't even pluck out Mary Had a Little Lamb. But at any rate, this book, The Talent Code, it looks at the formation of neurons and what are called myelin sheaths in the brain and in the nervous system. And they've proven scientifically that you can create new neurological pathways and myelin sheaths and new habits literally until the day you die. And so there's so you can keep learning, you can keep growing. And your message, your first principle about there's always hope is powerful, and it's scientifically proven.
There you go.
Right? And so I love and appreciate that. So you said you had 2 answers for us. So what was the second one?
The second one is what can we do?
Yeah.
It's going to make a huge difference in our family.
Yeah.
To create a happier, healthier home. And it just sounds so basic, but it really gets down to listening. And I find that it's really hard. It's just so hard to listen, especially as a parent, especially when you have tweens and teens, because they say the darndest things sometimes. To hear what they say, we can have so much reactivity.
Yep.
And yet I think that is what causes the biggest disconnect.
Yeah.
I can attest to this personally, but I also see it with so many of the moms that I work with, is that, and I don't know what it is about the culture. I don't quite understand where this came from, that we are such a culture of parents, I'll say parents, moms, and but I think it's more women, where we blame ourselves if our kid is not, we put so much responsibility on ourselves if our kid is falling short in some way, or they're not thriving in an area, or maybe they're being disrespectful, and we're blaming ourselves and taking that upon ourselves. And in that process, what we end up doing is we end up giving a lot of advice. And we focus on the negative, like, okay, this over here, they're not doing this, so this needs to be tweaked. And then they're not, maybe they're doing this and I don't like this, and this needs to be tweaked. So we end up focusing so much on our kids' negative, on the negative. And so they tell us something, like they get in the car and they had a bad day and they hate their math teacher.
Right.
And, and we immediately jump in and start telling them, maybe why they shouldn't hate their math teacher, or that's not very nice to say about your math teacher, or rather than just listening and getting curious about it. And so I see that as a real breakdown in communication, is the giving advice, the nagging, the lecturing, or the rescuing, those things we tend to do, rather than hearing what they really have to say and being curious about it.
Okay, so you said being curious twice. By the way, I love
that.
this advice, because, and I just want to say, guilty as charged. Like, I'm an amazing lecturer. I'm just so proficient at it.
He's got some really good.
Oh yeah. I'm great.
Oh, and if they just listened, life would be so much easier. It would all go smoothly. Their lives would be just fantastic, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think too, I want to come to your curiosity point, because it's such a fascinating approach to listening that I'm not sure that I really explored before. So, but I think too, there's something about our society. We're a rapid to be offended, high contentious sort of anti-civil world nowadays, right? It's like, well, you said that, well, you offended me, and then we want to jump on and start defending and counterattacking, and we see it everywhere. And I think that parents maybe are picking up on that, and children sort of expect it, and they're ready for the counterattack. And teens and tweens are awesome at counterattacks. They're good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so,
yeah.
Not that I know this personally, I'm just saying.
I say they're like turtles, or they're like cats. So if they're expecting that advice, right? They're just like on guard for it. And they think like, oh, it's coming. And you can see the body language.
Yeah.
And then when you do it, because all of a sudden it shuts down the conversation. And it's like they're back in their shell. Yeah. And they're all pulled in. Yeah. And so when moms start listening, all of a sudden they start seeing their kids' like head starts peeking out of the shell. Oh, I'm not going to get this barrage of advice, or dad, he's not going to give me all this advice. And so they start talking more. Yeah. And I don't know who, I have to Google it and see who came up with it. But there is an 80-20 rule, like listen 80% of the time, talk 20.
Yeah.
And that, just when moms start doing that, it makes a huge difference.
Unbelievable. I love that. I'm obsessed with 80-20. It's like awesome brought this up. So tell us about the curiosity thing, because I think it's easy to react, especially if it violates like our standards or our little manual for how their life should be. Or if it's, something that's socially embarrassing, or we have all these parameters as parents, right? And if they say something or do something that steps across any one of those lines, I think that the natural reaction is to like you said, to react, to fix, to tweak, to adjust. So how do we shift that and get curious instead? And what does that kind of look like?
Yeah. Well, I think it's so easy to do. Oh my gosh. It's so easy to do, to react. So yeah, it's hard. I don't want anybody to think this is easy.
Right.
I think one of the things that can be helpful is noticing, when you want to, and going, oh my gosh, what am I, we do this whole exercise of, but you really have to slow it down. Like, what am I feeling? Usually we're afraid. Usually there's something that we are believing, we're attaching something to the behavior. And a lot of times that's what psychologists call fortune telling.
Oh.
And so we'll fortune tell. So something happens and we're attaching meaning to it, and then we're playing it forward.
Mm.
So, for example, my kid they're flunking math. They did poorly on a test. They're not really doing well in math. And you can play it out. They're never going to go to college. They're never going to amount to anything. They're always going to be lazy. They're going to be like Uncle Bill, and then the reaction becomes really big.
Right.
And so I think noticing like, okay, what's the story I'm telling myself? So I think that's always really helpful to reflect on. But also, I think we assume so much.
Yeah.
We assume we know. And I would say over the last year, I've been like, what if I don't assume that I know what anybody's really saying?
Uh-huh.
Like my husband or a client or a mom in a group or a friend. And I just say, well, explain to me exactly what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Or something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
And they usually tell me something different than what I assumed. And I'm always just blown away by it. I'll say to my husband, well, what do you mean by that? And he'll tell me, and I'm thinking, I would have never. I'm just always surprised. So I think too, we assume so much about our kids rather than saying, okay, because they can say something and maybe it goes against our values. We think it does. And we say, well, tell me about that. Like, I don't believe in God, right? I don't think God's real. And then, we can be, oh gosh, and versus, oh, tell me about that. You feel like, you're not believing that God is real. And then they might open up and say, yeah, because I've just seen like this has happened and God's just allowed it. And if he was real, then he wouldn't allow that to happen.
Right.
And then we can affirm like, yeah, that makes sense that it feels like that way to you. That's a human response a lot of the times when we think like, why are you allowing this? And that makes for such a better connection with our kids, conversation, than just, being like, what do you mean? You don't believe in God. That is one of our, values in this family. And for them, we just assume, and it's usually not, they're not saying what we think they're saying. They're saying so much more if we just were willing to listen to it.
And maybe they just don't have the vocabulary to really express what they mean too.
Exactly. Because usually they don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in fact, my oldest has written quite a few blog posts for us and that are very humbling. And that's what she says is, I could not articulate back then how I was feeling to be able to tell my parents how I was feeling, but I can now. And so this is what I want you parents to know.
No.
And one of the things that she says in one of the articles is if you freak out, I will not want to tell you. If I expect you're going to freak out.
Yeah.
And my mom freaked out a lot, she says, but she's grown a lot too. In the article, I'm like, I'm grateful she added that part in.
the caveat at the end, but she's growing. It's fine.
Honesty from our children. It's great.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I love the pattern of how you did this because you did a couple of things. First of all, you became aware. It's like, oh, maybe I am freaking out and lecturing, right? And second of all is that you had an interrupt. It's like, well, maybe it's different than what I think, right? Maybe I'm assuming here. And so let me ask a follow-up question. And then you mirrored the question back. It's like, oh, tell me about how you're not feeling like you believe in God. Tell me about that, right? So you mirrored the question back in a non-judgmental way, which was beautiful. And then you listened and then you reaffirmed like, oh, like, so you're feeling this, which is another clarifying question. And so this pattern that you have just walked us through is absolutely spectacular. And I love how that follows up with just a curious, inquisitive conversation with your child. That's like, and really what I think, I mean, just hearing you say that, and I'm putting myself in your child's shoes, I'm thinking like, oh, Mom actually cares.
Mhm.
And
Understands me.
I'm not evil, and she's just listening and understanding me, and like feels so much safer and better. It's just so cool, Sheryl,
Yeah.
to do that.
It does make a huge difference. And we're not always going to do it perfectly.
Yeah.
And we can even call ourselves out. Like, I'm really going to work on being a better listener.
Yeah.
And not, freaking out, or, I'm really going to work on not giving that advice. And one thing that we do also around the advice is we give unsolicited advice.
Yeah,
So we don't ask them, like, do you just want to vent and have me listen, or do you want to know what I think?
Mm.
And my family has a joke that they'll usually say, well, no, I don't really want to know what you think. And then they're like, but Mom gets it in there anyway. So I've been guilty of that, because it's really hard. Like when you said, because we have such good advice, right?
I know, right? Yeah.
We do, but it's not their idea. And with tweens and teens, that doesn't work so well, because it falls on deaf ears. And so if we can say, well, what do you think? Or what do you want to do? Or do you want me to support you? It's going to be their idea. And so it ends up going so much better, because then they have that autonomy. They feel more in control. They don't feel like we're trying to put it on them.
Right. Yeah. And I think that this is also super conducive to non-rebellion. A lot of teens and tweens get this rap of being rebellious people. And it's like, oh, they got to this age, and then they just freaked out, and then they're rebelling against everything that our family holds dear. And I think that maybe, again, before I say this, I want the big disclaimer here is no judgment on parents. Like, we're parents, we all get it. It's like, we're just on this journey figuring this out. And I already confessed I've messed up my children, so they're going to need therapy. So but sometimes we need to look in the mirror and go, well, actually, is the child rebelling, or am I pushing them away? And I think it's two different things,
Yes. Well, and because they want that autonomy, we hold it as rebellion. And yes, is it rebellion? Probably. I mean, if we want to call it that, but it's also that they want that independence and autonomy. And the more that I was trying to control my daughter, the more that she was feeling like she wanted to rebel.
Yeah.
And it became the self-fulfilling prophecy. And until I started learning how to do it differently, and being more curious to know her, and finding out that she was having a really hard time, and she didn't feel like I was safe to talk to. And so if we're trying to control them, which is usually because we're afraid in some way, so we want to clamp down and control, they are going to want to rebel. They're going to push back on that.
Have you found, what do you find is the relationship between your view of them? Like you said, we make all these assumptions. And so, and we run to the drastic nuclear explosion end of this thing really fast, right?
Really fast.
Oh yeah.
So what have you found in terms of your viewpoint of them and their response to you? Because I think that sometimes we make assumptions about who they are, and then we act accordingly, then they react. What have you seen as that relationship there in terms of our view of them and their reaction to us as parents?
Oh gosh, that's a good one. We are the mirror, and that we hold up this mirror to our kids. And I think that we have to really challenge ourselves with how we're seeing them. And
we are the mirror.
Yeah, we mirror back what we believe about our kids.
Yeah.
And so if I am mirroring that I don't trust my kid, then my daughter said, I didn't feel like you trusted me. And so then I was like, well, then why? She's not thinking I'm trustworthy. And so she was more apt to act out. Yeah. So very interesting. My youngest was 9 years younger. And she said, you always told me that you really believed I had the ability to make good choices and that I was wise. She said, and she definitely made some mistakes and some poor choices. But she said, but I always had that in the back of my mind.
Wow.
So I knew that you and Dad believed in me and trusted me. And so I didn't want to step over that line, you know? And so I think that is speaking to what you're asking.
Yes, it is.
You know, and our kids pick up on it. So if I'm looking at my kid like they're lazy, and then I'm angry because I think they're lazy, versus like, okay, what is going on with my kid? You know, what might I do that's going to motivate, or what am I doing that's demotivating?
Yeah.
So it's looking at it differently, from a whole different angle.
And I think what you're saying, this is the wind chime thing that you're talking about, right? Like you're shifting the perspective, and it's causing things.
Affecting everyone.
It is. And what I love is that I have a firm belief that our children really love us, and they want, and they really want our approval. They want our relationship. They want the connection there, and I think they want it intensely. And you know, your comment, I'm just thinking here, your comment about like there's always hope and it's never too late. And I think that's because there is such a powerful, you know, desire to want to connect with and to be loved by and to love our parents. I mean, I come from a challenging family situation, and most of my siblings won't talk to my dad. Right. And I've gone over backwards to forgive, and because I just want to have I want to relationship with my dad. Right. And when he does stuff, I like a compliment from my dad. It makes me feel good. I'm almost 51, and I like a compliment from my dad, you know? So it's like, so they want to feel that. And what you're saying is that, you know, we have such influence in their lives, but we have to deal with it with kid gloves. It's got to be done so lovingly and gently. Yeah.
Well, and I love that you're saying that, because our kids want to do well. You know, they want to do well. They just lack skills. If there's an area they're lacking skills to do well, because maybe they haven't learned how to be organized. And then you've got all the brain stuff going on. You know, their prefrontal cortex isn't fully working. So that's the executive functioning. So some kids are just, they're going to have trouble remembering stuff, you know? And more than others. And I can't imagine, you have how many teens in the house? You know, so we expect so much, and versus kind of getting back to what I was saying, focusing on those positive things, like looking at all the good stuff that they're doing and affirming that. And because what we do focus on grows. And if we're focusing on the good stuff, they're going to want to do more of that, versus focusing on what we don't like or what they could be doing better. And so that's a big one.
So another question for you, I mean, along these lines, this listening skill, I mean, so, you know, the old poem, you know, put the fence up on top of the cliff or the ambulance in the valley, right? Well, I don't know if you heard it. It's like,
yeah, that's a good one. I've never heard of that before.
Okay, that's a good one. So should we put the fence on the cliff or put an ambulance in the valley, right? So, so I know that a lot of times parents with tweens and teens, they're dealing with the ambulance in the valley. I mean, stuff's rough already. And you know, I watched my parents go through this. I had an older sibling that was severe drug and alcohol addict, and you know, from 14 on, and just exploded our family in crazy ways. And so I'm wondering your thoughts in terms of applying the listening factor in that scenario. Like they're just in a huge contentious crisis sort of environment, and what's your insights for parents that are there, and what hope do we have in terms of either rectifying that or creating some stability? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, again, there's hope.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. You know, it's really hard, and it feels like you're just buried, you're exhausted, and despairing and discouraged and confused, you know, all those feelings, and despair, feeling lost, feeling like nothing I'm doing is working. So there's a lot there.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of components to that. But I would say that focusing on the relationship first is really important. I mean, if you're speaking to like a kid that's out of control, what do you do when your kid is totally off the rails? I think you have to get support for yourself, number one. Like I would say,
love that.
Don't be alone in it, because you're not the only one. You might feel like you're the only one. I think social media has really done taken a toll on moms, because they see so much posted and then they get so discouraged. Like they look so happy. And I say, believe me, I know that it's not what it looks like. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. And everybody's putting their best pictures up on social media, but you can feel really isolated or concerned that somebody might judge you.
Yes.
Or you're already judging yourself, as being such a bad parent. And, this is my fault. And if I would have, woulda, shoulda, coulda. I would say, reach out and get support. There's other moms, there's other parents that are going through that, so that you feel like you have a sounding board, because we just need a place to go and dump it out, so we don't take it out on our kids. And I always say, like in our groups, like we're there to hold the bucket for you, you come and you just, like get it all out, there, so that you can go back and not take it out on your kid. Like you've had a place where you can really, or your husband, or your wife, you can, because sometimes moms are like, my husband is so sick of hearing me talk about how I'm worried about my kid, but to have another outlet. So I would say that's where it really starts, is just having some place to go so you feel less alone. That will bring anxiety down, because then when you hear other parents and what they're going through, and oh, maybe my kid is not as off the rails as I think. Maybe some of this is actually a little bit of teen rebellion. You can feel better. That's certainly what happened with me. I was like, oh, they're all talking about similar things, and I thought this was just me.
I was sure this happened because I'm such a terrible person, right? It's just, this is life.
The
right?
nature.
We think it's only us, and really, that was a huge one for me. So I would say that's that's key. And then to really focus on, okay, there is something, when our kids are acting out, there's something more going on. So I think that's where the curiosity comes in, that there's something that's happening. And so if we can look compassionately on what might my kid be needing, what might be going on underneath the surface, be more curious about that, and focusing on the relationship, things do start slowly turning around. I cannot tell you, we just we just closed our membership group, and we came off of this workshop series that I did, and moms are in there now, and they're like, already in a week, all I've been doing is trying to listen, and I cannot tell you the change.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
So just starting little by little to, think about what might my kid be needing, and how can I listen? And of course, dumping out our own stuff is really to be able to be more present, because we got to get rid of our reactivity. Caring.
I have this picture in my mind of just take the plutonium rods out of the nuclear reactor. It's like,
let's
just defuse this thing, because I can't blow up every single time my poor kid has a problem. So this is an amazing process you just walked us through. And I love this starting point of self, because man, if you're wired up yourself, it's so hard to be present and not react with your children. And then first of all, I love how you said, bless you. I love how you said, well, the first thing you do is fix the kid. You did not say that, right? It was like, awesome. First thing, get support for yourself. I love that. I think the second thing is, get curious and listen. And and then work on the relationship with the child, and figuring out in that listening phase of, wow, maybe there's an underlying problem here. I mean, I think about, it's like, we've had children, surprisingly, who have come and have been like, oh, look, I just cut my finger, or I've got a sliver, my hand hurts, or my, when they're really little, it's like the babies are crying. And a lot of moms don't realize, like, look, your infant's crying. There's only a couple reasons. They're hungry, their stomach hurts, or they got a full diaper. Usually, but there's a reason the kid's freaking out. So start triage and solve the stuff. Don't freak out on the kid because he's crying, right?
Yes.
And when they get to be teenagers and tweens, we forget. It's like, oh, they're freaking out probably because there's something going on, right? They don't have a messy diaper anymore, so we can't smell it as easy.
Or see the blood.
We gotta see the blood on their fingers.
Yeah.
Like, something's happening, and your insights to identify that are really cool. Yeah, really, really cool, because then you can deal with source core things.
And
Awesome.
if you don't know, it's okay. And your kid's not usually going to know what's going on with them either.
Right.
But just kind of knowing something, else is going on that I might not see here. It changes the way that we will come at them with a different energy.
Totally.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, I think I have like 200 more questions for you. However, we probably need to wrap up. I wonder if there's something that you would love, like a question I should have asked you, or we should have brought up, that you would love to talk about, or a little bit of wisdom there. And then before we go, I want to point people in how they can get deeper into your world, because I guarantee you somebody's going to listen to this and be like, oh my goodness, like, I need a support group. I need help. I need better tools. I need to understand how to listen. And for 15 years, you've figured out how to do this. And I think that they ought to step into your world and just figure it out. Like, skip the learning curve here, people.
Learn with Sheryl.
Cheryl's got it. Right?
Yes.
So anything that I should have asked you, or insights that you would like to share with us before we kind of close up here?
I think that it's, I guess I would say, don't be surprised. I think this is another kind of thing that often crops up with moms, is don't be surprised if your kid's upset, by you saying no to them. Or, you setting a limit with them, or whatever it may be, because they're gonna get upset. And it's okay. I see that a lot. Like, well, I'm trying to tell them why I've put this rule in place, or why this is, and they just will not see. And they don't understand. And so what moms end up doing is they're trying to convince them why this is a good thing.
Yeah.
Or dads, again, I'll say dads, we're trying to convince them why this is a good thing for them. And they're just not going to say, okay, thank you so much. They're just not going to do that. And so I think that's just another thing that I was thinking about as you were talking, that just know, and they're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
They're going to mess up. That's how they learn. So don't freak out when they make a poor choice. They, whatever it may be, it's going to happen. And it's just, our job is to be there and to, just be listening to them, helping them to process it, because they know so much more than we give them credit for.
Yes.
And usually they feel, when they mess up, they feel so badly about it.
Yeah.
So if we're just reaming them out, they don't really have to feel it. And they're usually already feeling so badly about it. Yeah. So they might not show you that they do, especially if your relationship is not in a great place. They're not going to give you that satisfaction just because they're probably hurting. But, but just knowing that they, like you said, they need to have that love and that acceptance, and know that we're their safe place. So
nice.
I'll end on that note.
What
That was
great
worth the
advice.
whole interview put
Right
together. That
there.
was awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me.
How do we get people into your world? Do you have a download or a newsletter, or what's the best way to bring them to you?
Well, the
Read your
best
book?
way would be to go to momsofTweensandteens.com.
Yeah.
We're actually starting, I don't know when this will air, but they can get it no matter when it is, because they can go to the workshop. We're redoing a lot of things, but they can go to like the printables and the workshops, free resources on our site. And this, the newsletter tomorrow that's going out, we're doing a whole gratitude challenge. And so you can print them out, and they're affirmations for your kids and things you're grateful for. And then we're following up, like if people want to start a gratitude jar with their kids. Okay. So we're doing a whole thing on that. And we just have lots of like free resources and ways that they can get connected. They'll see the podcast on there. Right. They can email me at Sheryl with an S, Sheryl at momsofTweensandteens.com. So lots of different ways that they'll find on the website, and to sign up for our newsletter. They can sign up there as well.
Nice.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we'll make sure to include those links and get people there. I just want to say a huge thank you. I love your openness, your down-to-earth advice, your insight, your joy. It's just been so great, and your wisdom, obviously, is just spectacular. So thank you so much, and thanks for the good that you're doing for families in the world. Families need it today. Moms need this today. So thank you for your work. Really appreciate it.
Really good. Yeah. We sure appreciate it. And I want to go and apply some of these things. I want to be more curious with my kids now. So great. Give us some. Thank you, Sheryl.
Yeah.
Thank you. This was so much fun to talk to both of you. And thank you so much for having me on the show.
Absolutely. We'll do it again. Take care. Thanks. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.